Chapter 1, The Return. Lydia Turner had never intended to return to Ashford House. It wasn't a decision made lightly. The old mansion stood on the outskirts of the town where she'd grown up, a crumbling relic of wealth long faded, perched atop the highest hill like a forgotten monument to the past. After her parents' mysterious death in a fire 5 years ago, Lydia had sworn never to set foot there again. But then the letter arrived. It was plain, unremarkable. Just a simple white envelope with her name scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. Inside, a single line was written. "Come home, Lydia. The house remembers." The words haunted her. They spoke of something she couldn't grasp, something buried deep in her memories, a shadow in the back of her mind. That strange, haunting phrase, "the house remembers," had lingered with her. So, despite her better judgment, Lydia packed her bags and returned to Ashford House, driven by a force she couldn't explain. As the car wound its way up the long, gravel road, the mansion loomed ahead, its jagged silhouette framed against a storm-dark sky. The shutters were closed tight, the windows dark, as if the house were holding its breath, waiting for her. Chapter 2, The Watchful Eyes. The moment Lydia stepped inside, a coldness seeped into her bones. The air was thick, stagnant, as if the house hadn't been touched in years. The grand staircase still stood at the center of the foyer, though now it was dark with dust and rot. The once luxurious carpet was faded, its threads unraveling. Cobwebs clung to the chandeliers above, and the silence was oppressive, the kind of silence that felt as though it had been waiting for her return. Lydia's breath caught as she crossed the threshold, a sudden shiver crawling up her spine. She remembered the stories, the whispered rumors of the house's curse. How the family who built it, the Ashfords, had vanished mysteriously, leaving nothing behind but secrets and whispers of dark rituals. It was said that the house was alive, that it fed on memories, on pain, on fear. The letter had mentioned something else, too. The house remembers. She had no idea what that meant, but she felt the truth of it. It was as if the very walls were watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. Each step she took echoed, loud and unnatural, as if the house itself was listening. As Lydia explored, she found something unexpected. A diary, old and worn, its leather cover cracked with age. It lay on a table in the library, abandoned as if someone had left it in a hurry. She opened it, her fingers trembling, and read the first entry. "I can feel the house watching me. It's like a presence, something alive beneath the floorboards, in the walls. It whispers when the wind is quiet. And it waits for something. Or someone." Her blood ran cold as she closed the diary, the echoes of her parents' deaths flashing in her mind. They had died in a fire. But it hadn't been an accident, had it? The memories were too blurry, the details too foggy. Chapter 3, The Whispering Walls. That night, Lydia slept fitfully in her childhood bedroom, the room she hadn't entered in years. The bed, though covered in dust, seemed strangely inviting. But sleep would not come. Every creak of the house seemed amplified, as though the entire structure was groaning, shifting beneath her. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but it was the sound inside that unnerved her most. Faint whispers, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves, gradually grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Lydia could hear her name, faint and low, threading through the murmurs. "Lydia, come closer." She stood, heart hammering, her pulse quickening. The whispers were not the wind. They were too deliberate. Too knowing. Trembling, Lydia opened the door to the hallway, the air growing colder with each step. The whispering intensified, now accompanied by a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging across wood. She followed the sound, guided by some unseen force, down the hallway to the attic door, which had always been locked when she was a child. But now, it was ajar. Lydia stepped inside, and the atmosphere seemed to thicken. The walls were covered with old portraits, paintings of the Ashford family. Their eyes, cold and lifeless, followed her as she moved deeper into the attic. On a dusty table in the center of the room sat an object wrapped in old cloth. As she approached, the air grew colder still, her breath visible in the dim light. The cloth trembled as if alive, and as Lydia's fingers touched it, the whispers stopped. "Don't open it." She pulled the cloth back. The object was a small, ornate box, made of dark wood. It was intricate, covered in carvings that seemed to shift in the low light. A chill ran through Lydia as she lifted the box, the weight of it strangely oppressive. She opened it. Inside, there was a small piece of burnt fabric. It was blackened and frayed, but when she touched it, a vision flashed before her eyes. Her parents. Their faces, pale and twisted in fear. The fire. The screaming. The heat. But there was something else. A figure, shrouded in darkness, standing in the flames, watching them burn. Lydia gasped, dropping the box. The visions faded, but the weight of what she had seen remained. Chapter 4, The Unseen Force. The house was no longer just a house. It was alive, and it was hunting her. Lydia could feel it, deep in her gut, like an animal stalking its prey. The whispers were louder now, more desperate, and the walls seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Every corner she turned, every hallway she entered, felt wrong, unnaturally so. She wasn't alone. And the longer she stayed, the more the house seemed to draw her in, as if it were feeding on her fear, on her confusion. She ventured deeper into the mansion, past rooms she'd never noticed before, through doorways that shouldn't have existed. At the end of a long, hidden corridor, she found a door she was sure hadn't been there before. It opened without a sound. Inside was a large, circular room, its walls covered in strange symbols. The air was thick with a presence that made Lydia's skin crawl. And in the center of the room was a large mirror, old, ornate, and covered in dust. As she approached, she saw her reflection. But it was wrong. The face in the mirror was hers, but the eyes were empty, black holes, like pits of endless darkness. The house remembers. The words flashed in her mind. The house had been waiting for her, for years. It knew her. It knew what she had forgotten. Lydia could feel the heat of the flames again, the burning pain, the terror. She remembered now, the fire wasn't an accident. The house had made sure of that. It had taken her parents, and now it was going to take her too. She tried to turn away, to flee, but the house would not let her. The walls seemed to stretch, and the whispers became screams. And in the reflection of the mirror, a figure moved. A shadow, tall and thin, wearing the face of her father. His mouth opened, and the whispers came from him now. "You belong to the house, Lydia." Chapter 5, The Last Breath. The walls closed in around her, the air thick and choking. Lydia ran, her footsteps echoing through the mansion, but no matter how fast she ran, she could never escape. The house twisted, changing its shape, the room stretching and shifting, as if it had a life of its own. She reached the front door, the door she had come through just hours ago, but it wouldn't open. The air was thick with the scent of smoke, the heat suffocating, and she felt the house pulling her, claiming her. The house remembers. The words were no longer a whisper. They were a scream. Lydia turned to face the mansion, her body trembling, and saw her parents standing in the doorway, their faces twisted in anguish. "You cannot leave," her mother whispered, her voice as hollow as the house itself. "You're a part of it now, Lydia." And then the flames came. Not from the outside, but from within the walls, from every crack and crevice. The fire engulfed the mansion, swallowing it whole, and Lydia screamed, but her voice was lost in the inferno. The house had claimed her. And it would never let her go. The echo of her screams lingered in the walls, just as the house had promised. It remembered, and it always would. And it was hungry.